Stand on Hadrian's wall today, and the wind cuts through you like a blade. This 73-mile barrier marks the cold, rain-soaked edge of what was once the Roman Empire. But rewind 1900 years, and you would have found legionaries from Syria and North Africa huddled in wooden forts, shivering through British winters in nothing but wool tunics. Conquest. Baths. Slaves. Stone. Using cutting-edge AI reconstruction, we are about to walk you through every aspect of life in Roman Britain, from the conquered Celts to the villas you can visit today. Dawn breaks over Londinium in the year 150 AD. You wake not to an alarm, but to the sounds of carts rumbling on cobblestones and vendors shouting in the street below. If you are wealthy, you sleep in a proper bed with a wool-stuffed mattress in a villa heated by hypercaust, the underfloor heating system that channels hot air from a furnace through hollow tiles beneath your floor. But most Britons sleep on straw pallets in timber frame houses with dirt floors. There are no bedrooms as we understand them. Privacy does not exist. Families sleep together in a single room. Children, parents, sometimes slaves, all sharing one space separated only by a hanging cloth if you are fortunate. The Romano-British elite own domus townhouses with multiple rooms surrounding a central courtyard. Mosaics cover the floors depicting gods and geometric patterns. But even in these grand homes, windows have no glass, only wooden shutters that must be closed against the cold, plunging rooms into darkness. Heating is expensive. Hypercausts require constant tending by slaves stoking wood into the furnace. Most mornings, you wake to cold air and frost on the inside of the walls. Breakfast is not a meal Romans recognize. You eat nothing until midday, maybe a piece of bread soaked in wine if you are wealthy. The poor chew on stale barley porridge. By the reign of Hadrian in 122 AD, Londinium imports olive oil from Hispania, wine from Gaul, and garum, the fermented fish sauce Romans pour on everything, from the Mediterranean. But most Britons still eat what Celts have always eaten: barley, oats, turnips, and leeks. Meat is a luxury. You are far more likely to eat lentil stew than roast boar. If you work hard. 90% of Roman Britain is rural. Farmers wake before dawn to plough fields behind oxen, harvest grain with sickles, and thresh wheat by hand. In the towns, blacksmiths hammer iron, potters spin clay, and fullers, laundry workers, stomp on togas in vats of human urine to bleach the fabric. Yes, urine. Public urinals collect it for the fulling trade. Women weave wool on upright looms for hours each day. Spinning thread is endless work. There are no machines. Every garment is made by hand. Slaves do the worst labor, emptying chamber pots, scrubbing floors, hauling water from wells or the River Thames. A slave in Londinium might be a captured brigand tribesman from the north or a child sold by desperate parents during famine. You own nothing. You are property. And Roman law allows your master to beat you, brand you, or crucify you for disobedience. Step into the streets of Londinium at noon, and you are assaulted by noise. Merchants hawk oysters and apples. Wagons creak under loads of grain. Blacksmiths clang hammers on anvils. The streets are narrow, 10 feet wide at most, and paved with gravel or cobblestones. There are no sidewalks. Pedestrians dodge carts, horses, and human waste. Yes, waste. Chamber pots are emptied out of second-story windows into the street below. The smell is overwhelming. Rotting fish, human excrement, tanning hides, wood smoke, it all blends into a permanent stench. Londinium by 200 AD has a population of 30,000 people crammed into 1 square mile. The Forum is the heart of the city, a massive public square surrounded by colonnades where merchants sell goods, magistrates hold trials, and citizens gather to hear announcements. A basilica dominates one end, a grand hall with towering columns where legal cases are heard and business contracts are sealed. Near the river, warehouses store amphorae of wine, stacks of pottery, and bales of wool destined for Gaul. The governor's palace overlooks the Thames, a sprawling complex with gardens, fountains, and mosaic floors. But walk 5 minutes in any direction and you find squalor. Timber tenements lean over alleyways. Entire families live in single rooms above taverns. Fire is a constant threat. In 125 AD, a blaze sweeps through Londinium, destroying entire blocks. There is no fire brigade. Neighbors form bucket chains, but often the only option is to tear down buildings to create a firebreak and let the flames burn themselves out. Romans in Britain worship a chaotic mix of gods. Jupiter, Minerva, and Mars receive sacrifices at grand temples with marble columns and bronze statues. But the legionaries stationed along Hadrian's wall also worship Mithras, a Persian god whose rites are performed in underground chambers called Mithria. Initiates are baptized in bull's blood. They swear oaths of loyalty in torchlit ceremonies. Meanwhile, the native Britons never fully abandon their Celtic deities. Sulis, goddess of the hot springs at Aquae Sulis, modern Bath, is merged with the Roman Minerva into Sulis Minerva. Worshippers throw curses inscribed on lead tablets into the sacred spring, begging the goddess to punish thieves or unfaithful lovers. Festivals punctuate the year. Saturnalia in December is a week of feasting, gift-giving, and role reversals where slaves are served by their masters for one day. In reality, it is a brief, drunken respite from hierarchy. Lupercalia in February involves naked priests running through the streets, striking women with goat-hide whips to promote fertility. By the 3rd century, Christianity begins to spread. In 304 AD, a Romano-British soldier named Alban is executed in Verulamium for sheltering a Christian priest. He becomes the first British martyr. But Christianity remains a minority faith. Most Britons still sacrifice sheep to ensure good harvests and pour wine libations to household gods before meals. Magic is everywhere. Curse tablets are common. Amulets ward off the evil eye. Soothsayers read the future in animal entrails. The line between religion and superstition does not exist. Marriage in Roman Britain is not about love. It is about property, alliances, and heirs. Girls are married as young as 12 to men often twice their age. Fathers arrange matches. Dowries are negotiated. A bride has no say. On the wedding day, she is led from her father's house to her husband's in a torchlit procession. Guests throw nuts, symbols of fertility. The groom carries her over the threshold to symbolize the abduction of the Sabine women, that founding myth of Rome. Then the marriage is consummated, often with family members waiting just outside the door to confirm it. Pregnancy is dangerous. 1 in 5 women dies in childbirth. Midwives use herbal remedies, pennyroyal to ease contractions, willow bark for pain, but infection is common. If the baby survives, the father has the right to reject it. Deformed or sickly infants are left outside to die from exposure. This is not considered murder. It is simply familiar discretion. Children who survive infancy face a brutal world. Half do not live past the age of 10. Disease, malnutrition, and accidents claim them. Those who reach adulthood marry young and begin the cycle again. Divorce is legal and common among the elite. A husband can divorce his wife for adultery, infertility, or simply because he no longer wants her. A wife has far fewer rights but can divorce under certain conditions if she has powerful family backing. Homosexuality is acknowledged but structured by power. A Roman man can take a male slave as a lover without social stigma, but being the passive partner is shameful. Love, as we understand it, is rarely the foundation of any relationship. Duty is. Life expectancy in Roman Britain is 35 years if you survive childhood. Disease is everywhere. Malaria is endemic in the marshy fenlands of East Anglia. Tuberculosis ravages crowded tenements. Dysentery spreads through contaminated water. There are no antibiotics. No understanding of germ theory. Physicians, e-medici, are trained in the theories of Galen, who believes illness is caused by an imbalance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Treatment involves bloodletting, purging, and herbal poultices. If you cut your hand and it becomes infected, gangrene may force amputation with a bronze saw and no anesthesia beyond wine and opium. Soldiers along Hadrian's wall suffer from frostbite, arthritis, and dental abscesses. Archaeological evidence from the fort at Vindolanda shows skeletal remains with severe joint damage from years of marching in cold rain. When you die, your body is either cremated or buried outside the city walls. Roman law forbids burial within town limits. If you are wealthy, your family commissions a stone sarcophagus and a tombstone with an inscription recording your name, age, and accomplishments. But most Britons are buried in simple graves marked only by wooden posts that rot within a generation. The rich are commemorated in stone. The poor vanish into the earth, forgotten. Infant mortality is so common that tiny graves cluster in cemeteries. Some are buried with toys, clay dolls, wooden horses, objects meant to comfort them in the afterlife. Graves along Hadrian's wall reveal soldiers from across the empire: a Syrian archer, a Tungrian spearman, a North African cavalryman, all buried in the cold British soil, far from home. Stand in the ruins of Londinium today, and you can still see the foundations. The Roman wall that encircled the city is still there, fragments of it visible beneath modern buildings. The amphitheatre where gladiators fought lies beneath the Guildhall. The bathhouse at Hadrian Hill is a scheduled monument. For 367 years, Roman Britain was a province at the edge of the world. A place where Mediterranean order collided with Celtic tradition. Where soldiers from the deserts of Syria shivered on Hadrian's wall. Where villas with heated floors stood miles from villages of thatched huts. The empire left in 410 AD, but the roads, the walls, and the stone cities remained. A civilization that refused to die. You can visit the ruins today. And when you do, remember, real people lived here. They woke to cold mornings. Worked until dusk. Loved and died in the shadow of empire.